day, ma'am. My name is Danica Amolat from Bshm 2A, and for today's video is I'm going to report about the Chapter 8 in Organizational Management, which is the Organization for Production Manufacturing. So we have here the first slide. Production or manufacturing, as it is more commonly called, is concerned with making of things, the creation from utility. Etymologically, the word manufacturing means making by hands. However, very few articles are made solely by hands. Even the simplest type of manufacturing necessitates some tools. There are hand tools and machine tools. In addition to tools, various types of equipment are often necessary depending on the nature process of the manufacturing. So the basic function of manufacturing is to change the raw materials or secondary materials into a more useful form of state. It may involve a changing of nature of the material or a changing or its form. Moving on to the next slide, we have here in the Philippines, agriculture is still the biggest sector in the economic's production pattern. It is contributed 34% to the total production in 1963. Manufacturing, however, registers increases. As percent of total in 1953, it jumps to 18.5% in 1963. Manufacturing output rose from 834 million in 1953 to 2,697 million in 1963, or an increase of 223.4%. So, the manufacturing division of a large company is usually its largest division and employs the biggest number of people. The office personnel department, finance department, and the facilitating department may be dominant by the manufacturing division. So the other department like purchasing, transportation, maintenance, and services, control may be sub-jury during the units of manufacturing division. In fact, only sales may rank equal to manufacturing in the company. Moving on to the next slide, we have here types of production processes. The methods by which the materials of industry are produced or manufactured into the things that industry or consumers want are known as production processes. So according to one classification, production processes are first, extractive, second, analytic, third, synthetic, fourth, fabricating. So let's identify it one by one. So first we have the extractive process. So in some industry, the basic production process is one of the extracting substances from the earth or the sea. So known as the extractive processes. Examples of these are the mining of coal, iron, or gold and silver, and also the extraction of magnesium and other chemicals from the ocean. And second, analytic processes. So the analytic process is one in which a basic substance is broken down into a number of other material which may or may not bear any resemblance to the parent substance. And third, the synthetic processes. So synthetic process refers to those industries in which a number of different materials are combined to form a single product. And the fourth one is the fabricating process. So the term fabricating process, although used principally in the structural steel business, refers to a process that is rather widespread in industry wherein a material has its form changed to some extent by being machined or treated in some other manner. And it is sometimes called the converting process, particularly in textile field. Moving on to the next slide, we have here the continuous process. So unfortunately, the term continuous process has a dual meaning that is frequently confusing. So it is sometimes used to describe a manufacturing situation in which the productive facilities must be kept continuously in operation for relatively long periods of time. So moving on to the next slide, we have here intermittent process. So here again, as with its counterpart, there is a double meaning to intermittent process. So in its first sense, that the term refers to any manufacturing process that can be stopped at will, for example, at the end of each day, and that can be started up again the next morning with no difficulty. So, under this concept of the term, almost any industry that operates a purely one shift a day basis would qualify. So moving on to the next slide, we have here increasing production. So four processes in production have been used to good advantage in marketing, transportation, office management, and other business function. So it is in manufacturing, however, when they find greatest application and are mainly responsible for the progress of industrialization in advanced countries, and these processes are specialization, standardization, simplification, and mechanization. So let's identify this one by one on what are these for. So, first we have here specialization. So, specialization refers to the narrowing of the field of activity. A company may specialize in products instead of putting out a variety of radio electronic products. A company may specialize in only a few kinds of transistor radios, which it would develop to a high degree of quality and perfection. And next, the second one is simplification. So, simplification refers to the reduction in the number of types, sizes, forms, designs, colors, and other characteristic of a product. And the third one is standardization. So this refers to the setting up of standards or norms as to size, quality, form, measure, weight, or other similar features. For instance, electric light bulbs are generally standardized such that a bulb purchased anywhere can fit a socket in any home, and automobile or Jeep parts are standardized by manufacturers to enable mass production and easier repairs. And lastly, the mechanization. So, this mechanization refers to the development of machines to perform as much of the manufacturing process as possible. And manual skills of workers are supplanted by machine skills. A mechaniz- a mechanized printing establishment may use a folding and binding machine to take over the work of 20 laborers in the end processes of preparing books. And further to mechanization, it is the process of automation where human effort is further reduced to a barely minimum and where servo mechanism even take over supervision and adjustments. And moving on to the next slide, we have here a new method of production scheduling is called PERT. So PERT introduced in 1968, like some other managerial techniques, a planning controlling techniques, the basic analytical device of PERT is a network consisting of pictorial description of the necessary work. And this network is made up of activities and events that comprise a project, and an activity shown by an arrow, an event by a circle, and the former represents work required to accomplish an event. And estimates of time to complete each activity are indicated on the network. Moving on to the next slide, we have here PERT. PERT is an advantageous for non-repetitive, non-routine project, and it is being used in research and development projects and the conducting of a new products developments, the preparation of building and proposal, periodic maintenance, shutdowns, pilot plans, and construction of buildings, bridges, and power station. PERT can helps. So first, we have here focus attention on potential problems in any project, reasonably predict the attainment of project, and second, we have here indicate feasible adjustment in related activities to improve overall project accomplishments. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the factors involved in manufacturing. The manufacture of any article involves the following factors. So first we have the design, next the material, and lastly the processing. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the requirement of design. So the design of an article must meet four requirements, namely first, consumer acceptance, second, utility, third, economic processing, and fourth, proper kind of material to be used. So let us identify it one by one. So first, consumer acceptance. So the design of the article must have what is called consumer acceptance. The article must appeal to the consumer's taste or desire. A shoe manufacturer, for instance, who manufacture a high-cut style of shoes for men, would find very little sales for his business. Few men today wear such style except for occasional needs. And the second is the utility. So the second requirement of design is that the product shall adequately serve the purpose for which it is intended. The product must be useful. A beautifully designed and attractive chair may not be strong enough to serve as a chair for day to day. Not too much or not too many families can afford purely decorative furniture, especially if there are many children. So utility is an article in needed and imperative consideration in design. Consumer desire for beauty and should be harmonized the utility. And third, economic processing. So as a third requirement, the design of an article should not be a cost for the use of uneconomical manufacturing processes. If the design slows down the process of manufacturing, high cost of production will result. And the lastly, kind of material to be used. The fourth requirements of design in that it must suit the materials of which the article is made. So the material must have to be worked to produce the design wanted. So some materials are more workable than others, and some processes can be used with some materials and not with others. And moving on to the next slide, we have here choice of materials. So as a second factor in manufacturing, the choice of materials among other things depends on first, utility or purpose, second, durability, and lastly, the third one, cost of development and manufacture of the products. So let us discuss it one by one. So first, we have here the utility. So articles may have either a utility purpose or a decorative one, sometimes both. An ornament has little utility if it is merely for decorating something like a house, or such decorative articles carry temporary consideration. And next, the durability. So articles with utility purpose are made with some consideration for durability. So the choice of durable material is desirable. So at the same time, economical manufacture is also desirable in order to keep costs down. And the next one is we have here the cost of development and manufacturing. So before undertaking to develop a particular product, the management must be able to envisage a return on the product that is commensurate with the cost of development. And it goes without saying that this requires not only forecast of market for the product, but also the knowledge of time, effort, and equipment required in its development. Also, important is the estimated cost of manufacturing the product, which must be done economically, otherwise product will be a little use. So moving on to the next slide, we have here processing. So in manufacturing, the third and the last factor involves is processing, which requires a machine and labor and the proportion. However, of each is seldom the same in the manufacture of two different products. For example, the manufacture of safety razor blades uses highly automatic machines, and several of which may be tended by one person. So other processes, however, may require two or three or more attendants to a machine. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the trend to automaticity. So the tendency in machine designs is to make machines more automatic in their operation so that less labor is required. So the early printing machine was operated by hand while the modern printing press is run by an electric motor and feed automatically. So the trend is generally toward more and more automatically. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the advantages of automaticity. So it is obvious that the more automaticity is an operation, that the less labor is required and consequently, the less costly they will be. So, in as much as the cost of manufacturing affects the selling price of the product, it is a possible for one manufacturing concern of similar products to outcompete his competitors in the same field. If he can cut costs and charge a lower price for the same quality, a lower price brings the articles within the reach of more purchasers and those open up for wider market. So moving on to the next slide, we have here layout influences production. So another determining factors in production is layout. So this refers to the arrangement of machine and equipment in any kind of work according to the sequence of operation. So there are other factors influencing an ideal arrangement, and some of these factors are the size and shape of the space available, accessibility, convenience, transportation facilities for more materials, and light and power facilities. Sometimes this influence can be wholly or partly satisfied or overcome, and sometimes they are insurmountable, especially if to correct them requires the outlay of money that is not available. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the efficiency of labor. So the efficiency of labor likewise has a marked effect on price and market. So when Mr. Henry Ford in 1914 set a $5 a day minimum wage for all workers, he took a step that assured him the peak of the mechanical skill in the country. So when in 1940, Mr. James Lincoln paid each of his employees a minimum of $5,000 a year, and he was able to cut his manufacturing costs to one-fifth of his nearest competitors. So the same is true in the Philippines. So the bigger, reputable, and more progressive companies, the less they manage not only to survive but even outsell their competitors. So to pay an incompetent worker a high wage does not necessarily increase his efficiency. And to pay a lazy worker a high wage may encourage him to lay off and leave after earning a little extra money. So the efficiency of labor is complex quality that is based on manufacturers. So moving on to the next slide, we have here control of production. So in the broadest sense, control of production signifies the management of manufacturing. So primarily, it is concerned with the aspects of time, place, and quality, and also quantity. So control of production uses all the information in dictating what is to be made, from what is to be made, where it is to be made, and how it is to be made. It also furnishes the specification, instructional details, and paperwork necessary to carry out those plans. And it gives data to the manufacturing units and collects reports on performance as a guide for future operation and to check on current performance. And also production controls facilitates the flow of work, sees to its part are needed when they are needed, and enables the company to meet time schedules. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the production control consists of a well-defined set of procedures that has an objective and the coordination, of all the elements of production into a smoothly flowing whole, resulting in the fabrication of products with the minimum of interruption at the earliest possible time and the lowest possible cost. And also, production control is performed to assist in utilizing designated materials, machines, and the proper amount of time at the right time. So moving on to the next slide, we have here the control of inventories. So control of inventories not only prevents wastage and minimizes theft, but also facilitate cost accounting of the manufacturing process. And ordering points when economic quantities may be ordered can be set with greater precision. So it is also easier to establish the warning point when follow-up of materials which have been ordered must be made, and otherwise delays and interruption in actual manufacture may result. And moving on to the next slide, we have here the effective control of inventory is aimed at ensuring that an adequate but not excessive bank of materials is on hand at all times to meet operating requirements. So under ideal operation, materials would move through a plant in a smoothly flowing stream, and no storage of material would be required at any point. While this ideal is seldom completely realized, and some companies with high manufacturing volume approach it by close scheduling of incoming materials prior to time of use. Moving on to the next slide, we have here the quality control. So the manufacturing end of a business is not only responsible for production, for producing quickly at a reasonably low cost, but it is likewise responsible for the quality of the product. Quality is controlled by having precise specification and necessary inspection of the product to see that the specification are adhered to. So usually certain tolerance are allowed, and limits within which the product may vary on one way or the other. And moving on to the next slide, we have here the product engineer take care of designs and specification of the products of an enterprise, and it is a highly specialized phase of designing, particularly in metal working industry. And the product engineer must have a understanding of technical requirements and sees to it that quality is assured not only in performance but also in the ability of the product to be used without too much repair or servicing. While quality is his concern, the product engineer also requires understanding of consumer desires and preferences, and he should also know the problem inherent in manufacture.
So that ends with my reporting, ma'am. Thank you so much and God bless you always.